I want to begin by speaking about the internet's original sin. The internet failed in one particular way, and it's really affected a lot of things that have happened since. The internet could move information, but could not move money. It couldn't really move money. Not the way that you could move a message or information. Instant, globally, and without permission. That single omission has really affected how things have been built over the last 30 years. And this industry specifically has focused the last 15 years to correcting that mistake. So I feel like it's an important point for everything that we work on here to kind of understand that there is a mission behind the work that we do and kind of fixing that missing piece. So when we talk about the things that are specific to Solana and why we're starting to see some change over this work that's been conducted over the last 15 years, we are seeing some of that change on Solana, right? We're seeing the impact of 15 years of decentralized work that can actually be competitive with their centralized counterparties or their centralized competitors. I speak to a lot of blockchain companies, a lot of teams that are building blockchains, a lot of teams that are building products. They are always asking me, like, what makes Solana special? Why does Solana command the user base that it does? Why is it so popular? Why does it do so well on metrics that are important to blockchains, right? Whether it's bridge TVL or DEX volumes or unique wallets or any of those metrics. And it's really hard for me to answer that question because I do look at each blockchain as an economy. And it's very hard to just take one or two aspects of an economy and say, that's the reason for their success. So I usually kind of answer it with, it really comes down to the people. It comes down to the culture. If you can foster that kind of culture, you will have a lot of success. The way I describe Solana's culture is you've got these rebellious engineers who are mission-driven. They believe in a free financial system. They think that that's something worth pursuing. You've got unorthodox quants that are leaving a very lucrative or predictable path in HFT because they believe they can build better markets on chain. You've got unapologetic founders that are mission-driven and believe the world will be better with a free and transparent financial system. And you've got, unfortunately, yes, degens as well in there. All of those colliding together in the same ecosystem kind of give you, I think, give you the best shot at creating an economy that's as vibrant as the one on Solana. There are like three things that I think are not the only things, but there are important things that allow for these economies to work. One is how assets come into the space. Two is how users are onboarded. And then three is how capital markets form. I think those three things within an economy are jet fuel for growth. So if we just look at Wormhole's data, we can see that 30% of transfers end up going to Solana. Solana is the destination chain for those transfers. That's almost $12 billion worth of value that's come into the Solana ecosystem. And behind that value are users, real companies and real people that are looking to use the technology and the services and the different products that are being built within that ecosystem. So, by our estimation, there's about 300,000 new users this year that have entered the Solana ecosystem just to use its products, transact on its markets, and hopefully get some value. The second thing is how users onboard, right? A way a user can come into the Solana ecosystem is by swapping its non-native assets into native assets. Mayan is a protocol that allows for this to happen. And if you've ever used any of the major wallets, such as Phantom, Solflare, or Backpack, or you've used a DEX like Radium or an aggregator like Jupiter, likely if you've swapped from a non-native asset to a native asset, you've probably used Mayan. They've seen over $5 billion worth of value come into the Solana ecosystem just through their product. I think those two things are pretty table stakes at this point. You've got to be able to bring assets in, and you've got to be able to onboard users to those applications so that they actually have the right assets to be able to use the products. The last thing I'll talk about is Sunrise. Sunrise is a first of its kind. It was able to demonstrate the formation of capital markets competitively. And the operative word there is competitively. The first asset listing that Sunrise conducted on Solana was the Monad token. It took a non-native token that wasn't issued on Solana, brought it to Solana on day one, minute one, competing not only with all of the other venues on chain, but also competing with their centralized competitors, all the centralized exchanges out there. And within the first 24 hours, we saw Monad spot volumes surpass Hyperliquid's. We saw Monad's spot volumes in the first 24 hours surpass even on Monad itself. Now, that's not a knock on Monad. Monad was 1 day old. But it definitely shows us the power of the user base that's on Solana today. It shows us that tapping into that economy or that market can really make a material difference if you're an asset issuer. Now, for the statistic that I'm most interested in or I'm most excited about, if Solana were a centralized exchange, it would have been a top 5 day one centralized exchange for the Monad listing. It's very hard to do. Anyone who's built decentralized technologies always knows that the centralized counterpart who has full control of the stack, that's living in a data center, will outcompete you with speed. And if it's a market-based platform, obviously spreads and liquidity and all of these other things. So for that to happen on-chain day one, minute one was not an easy thing to do, but Sunrise was able to do that and really demonstrate to the world that you can have on-chain capital markets form on the internet and be just as competitive as centralized competitors. And so when I say that top 5, it was a top 5 centralized exchange listing on-chain, but it beat out Kraken, it beat out KuCoin, it beat out BitGet, it beat out Gate. Like, these are very well-known exchanges that most of us know. Some of these exchanges have million-plus user bases, and it was able to be, quote, tighter spreads. It was able to do more volume than those exchanges, all with its native Solana ecosystem user base. So for me, I get really excited about all of the stuff that Sunrise is doing and these listings being possible today on Solana, because not because we're only competing with centralized exchanges, but we're also competing with everything else that's centralized. So if I can demonstrate that a crypto asset can issue on-chain in a decentralized way, and it can be just as competitive with its centralized counterparties, it's not just about the crypto token. It can be an equity, it can be a commodity, it can be any financial product. So that's really what I think the big first use case that we saw with Sunrise and with this listing on Solana. And lastly, I want to just say, like, the mission-driven approach for this, right? If you don't have capital formation happening on-chain, if you don't have price discovery happening on-chain, you're never really going to create that free, transparent, permissionless financial future. You have to have all of these components in a competitive way on-chain. That hasn't been the case traditionally. This was the first time that I saw an on-chain spot listing surpass centralized exchanges. This was the first time I saw an on-chain spot listing that wasn't on its native blockchain list on-chain in a minute one, day one scenario. So that being said, I'm very excited about what the Solana ecosystem is going to bring. I'm very excited about what Sunrise, the next listing that Sunrise is going to do. And I'm very excited about capital markets forming on the internet, largely based on Solana. So thank you so much.